Hello everyone, Namaste. My name is Dr. Aditya and I am speaking from Ananda Sangha, Pune in India. And I want to first of all congratulate the team of Beyond Mind for organizing this beautiful program. And I'll be sharing, friends, today with you the teachings of Paramhans Yogananda ji, especially from the point of holistic health and holistic wellness. How can we apply that in our lives on different levels? What does holistic health mean? And also, when we speak of, you might say, health or regaining our health, recovering from an illness, many times our focus might be on the illness itself. Now, of course, we need to understand the illness, we need to have a very proper, specific diagnosis. But once that is made, how can our focus, how can the treatment be health centric, not so much disease centric? Because disease has come when you might say some law of health has been broken. So, how can we go back into the state of health and remain there? Especially, you might say, using primarily the aid of life force or prana or life energy, as Paramhans Yogananda ji used to call it. So, we will learn some of these basic things in the next 15 minutes. To give you a little background of myself, I trained in medicine and my post graduation, I received training during that time in surgery. However, my keen interest for many years, even before I joined surgery, was preventive medicine. If you can prevent a problem, why treat it later? You won't have the problem itself. And so I kept that study, that search ongoing as I delved into surgery. But then you might say, witnessing the curative side of surgery, which is, by the way, such a beautiful, wonderful subject. I loved it very much. And I remember when I met Swami Kriyananda ji, my own teacher, I said to him, I love what I'm doing. It's just that I love what Ananda offers, what the teachings of Paramhans Yogananda ji bring so much more. And then I took his guidance on how to, you might say, strike a balance between my medical work and the spiritual life I was about to embark on. So, anyway, going back to that theme that we can cure an illness, we can prevent an illness, but then also with these thoughts, I was also having the thought of life and death. Witnessing death made me ask that question, what happens once the body stops responding to outward stimuli? And I have to say, I was not getting easy answers or clear answers from anywhere. But then the book Autobiography of a Yogi, written by Paramhans Yogananda ji, came into my life. And it was remarkable, the clarity, the breadth that he brought to the subject, you might say, of health and healing. And of course, spirituality. That is what helped me choose this direction in my life. For the last 13 years now, I have been a disciple of Paramhans Yogananda ji, and it has been a wonderful experience. And it is my great joy, friends, today to be sharing the teachings of holistic health as presented by Paramhans Yogananda ji. So, let us start with this, understanding this subject, the term itself. What does holistic mean? And many of you might know it comes from the Greek word holo, which means complete or whole. And then comes the question, well, what is the complete picture? What is the whole picture? And I want to share with you a beautiful illustration that came to my mind as I was thinking about it today. I was actually looking up and thinking on what to do, and I saw this beautiful chandelier in this place where I was sitting. And I kept looking at the chandelier. First, I was absent-mindedly looking at it, and then it struck me, oh, this is a nice illustration that if you imagine, I'm sure you've seen people in your life who were a picture of perfect health on many levels. And let's even define, you might say, holistic health, even though we'll go in that detail, but let's think of it as an all-rounded health from a body perspective, a mind perspective, a healthy mind and feelings, and we'll explore this, a spirit side of things, a spiritual side. So if body, mind and spirit is in a good harmony, there's a good flow of energy in that direction, you might say by and large the person is having holistic health. They are healthy in a very complete way. And as I was saying, I'm sure you've seen some people who are healthy in that way. Well, compare that chandelier to that person. Here is this beautiful structure. It's very proportionate. A lot of thought has gone into how the crystals should be arranged, what should their shape and the cleavage of cutting them should be. And then when the form is wonderful, light, the right light is sent through it, and bright light, perhaps hundreds of bulbs, and this electricity flowing through it, and suddenly it creates this perfect picture of beauty, of health. It gives a wonderful feeling. You might say light therapy and such things. They are very healing in their way. And that is exactly how Paramahansa Yogananda ji described how our body operates. Actually, one time he was walking through the Hermitage Gardens where he lived, and he went into a state of ecstasy, and some students were watching him, some devotees were there, and he was looking at them, and they were looking at this blissful state their master was in. And Yogananda ji after some time said to them with a blissful smile on his face, he said, "You all are so beautiful." He said, "I see you all as pure light." And then he added, he said, "The grass and the trees and the grounds are all made of light." And he stayed in that state for quite some time. And of course, you can imagine that people were looking at one another and they were seeing the forms only, physical forms. And this is the explanation Yogananda ji gave, which will help us address our understanding of holistic wellness. He said, of course, we have a physical form, but he said it is you might say, it's farthest, you might say on one level, from the true reality of who you and I are. He said, behind the matter reality is actually an energy body or an astral form. And he said, behind that astral form is actually a causal reality, a causal form. And where do these three forms, the causal, the astral, and the physical, come from? They all emanate, Yogananda ji said, from consciousness, from God, from spirit. And think of that chandelier also, friends. It just didn't manifest over there. Somebody had to give thought to it. That's the causal reality. A lot of people, I bet, put a lot of energy into cutting, polishing, arranging, rearranging all those crystals, getting the lights, fixtures, hiding the wires so it all looks beautiful. And finally, once the enough energy, thought and energy had been given, it was a beautiful physical creation. So sometimes you may have, let's say, gone to a doctor, or you hear in our own lives, we hear, oh, I have cough and cold, or I have a heart problem, a blood pressure issue, or a kidney issue. And of course, like I said in the beginning, it is wonderful that we live in times where diagnosis is very specific into the molecular state. Even we can get to know what exactly is the problem, where is the problem, what are we dealing with. However, from where has the problem arisen, and how might we be able to ensure or try our best that the illness is treated, a relapse does not happen? That depends on seeing the complete picture. Let me give you an example. Many years ago, I had a yoga student in a city where I was practicing medicine, and this lady one day brought her daughter, and in that town, I should say, there was only one chemist store who had good antibiotics that would keep those, and you couldn't get those without the prescription of a doctor. And so she came to me and she said, "Doctor, this is my daughter. She has sinusitis. She's been having it since childhood. Can you please prescribe a good antibiotic?" And I smiled. There were 4 people in their family over there. And before they could sit and explain the whole thing, or even let me examine the patient, I said to her, "Oh, so you've come for my prescription, not for my diagnosis." And she said, "No, please feel free to examine her. But we know this has been happening to her since many, many years." And at this time, I was looking at this young college girl, and I was thinking, why is her energy so low? She was feeling much more sick than a person who would have a bout of sinusitis. So I was looking, and in these moments of confusion, you might say, not knowing, I often pray to my guru, Yogananda ji, and say, just like, what's happening? What should I ask? And what might be going on? So I just put up this question and I examined her. And then I just felt inspired to ask her if she eats non-veg food, because my thought was, does she eat too much of it? And I said, do you eat chicken or other non-veg items? And her mom's jaw dropped. I remember her expression that moment. And all of them were a bit taken aback by a question on, you might say, the stomach, whereas the problem was here in the nose and forehead. And they were a little embarrassed. And then the mom said, Doctor, this is the perfect opportunity for you to scold this girl and her dad. These guys only eat chicken, morning, afternoon, and night. And sometimes that's all they eat. And this is, she said, how it goes on, has been going on at home. I at once knew that yes, there might be other causes, you might say, let's say, of sinusitis at play, but this certainly needed to be dealt with. And we addressed that. She was getting better very quickly. Her sinusitis bouts became less in frequency. Ultimately, she told me it happens now maybe once a year, if at all. And earlier it was just like she was in and out of that episode all the time. Now, the question is, what we need to see is, there was a problem in the nasal area, in the nose. But you can't ignore the diet part, you can't ignore the exercise part. I didn't make a long list of lifestyle changes for I just gave her 2-3 basic ones, that let's try to start increase the fruits and veggies, and let's start bringing the chicken a little bit down and see what happens. Of course, I gave her the antibiotics and took care of the immediate things. But the point is that there are other things that might be at play. For example, in Ayurveda, they say, and Yogananda ji said it too, he said if there are too many toxins in the bodies, he said they come out in the form of secretions. They come out through, passage of urine and such, and they also come out through nasal discharge. So the thing is that we need to be aware of what else might be going on. Actually, and a further question somebody might ask is, why was she eating so compulsively? That might be going into mind and feelings and habits and such. So this is the subject of holistic health, which gives us the opportunity, and it's not either or, it's not exclusive, it is integrated, which is another term for holistic wellness people are using these days. Another story I'd like to share with you is of this very good friend I have, who many years ago was having, I didn't know, but one day he called me seeking a consultation. The way he was speaking, and when he told me he hadn't slept for 2 days in a row, I told him, I'll come to see you, but then he finally came with his family member. Long story short, he had hypertension, anxiety, insomnia for a long time. He's a very busy person, goes between Mumbai and Pune, and saw the best doctors, had very good prescriptions from them. He called me, he said, even sleep medications are not helping me. My blood pressure is out of control. I am on 8 different tablets. And I saw him. I told him, continue what you're doing. Stay in touch, especially with your cardiologists. And I said, let's start making some changes. How about you, first of all, cut down on work? Start doing some basic pranayams, little bit meditation. I taught him Hong Sau technique of concentration, and Yogananda ji said super relaxation. I said, why don't you start walking a little bit? I remember after a month he was walking 45 minutes in the morning, 45 in the evening, to the point of perspiration. He was keeping his bathing water in a bucket in sunlight, as Yogananda ji recommended, if we can do that, to draw the prana of the sun into the water. And he was keeping freshly made orange juice for a brief moment, few minutes, again in sunlight. Orange is very good for our nerves, Yogananda ji said. We tried a few of these things, and I'll tell you, friends, as patients get well, they call their doctor less often, but sometimes we remember what happened to that case. I called him after 3 months. He said, sir, I'm on 1 tablet right now. How his doctors agreed to de-escalate so quickly, I don't know. But he said he had kept them informed, and he came down from 8 tablets to 1. Even now, when we meet once a year or so, I ask him, "Are you still on one?" He says, "One." I'm on one. It's maintaining very well. And that is the beauty, you might say, when we bring in exercise, dietary change, some meditation, pranayam, cut down on work which is not helping you, other habits. Let's say, I don't remember if he was smoking or not, but things like that. So, not just looking at you have blood pressure, hypertension, insomnia, anxiety, here's a tablet, here's a tablet, here's a tablet. It may be okay in the acute phase. It does not, as you saw, ultimately he was having 8 of those pills. It was not helping. Here's the interesting thing. Why do pills stop helping us in time? One of the reasons Yogananda ji said was that medicines themselves, matter is nothing but energy. And he said, in your body, medicines also work on life force through the medium of life force. Medicines also have what he called compacted life force, concentrated life force. So they help initially, but if your body's energy, you're not exercising, fasting, meditating, and such, or resting even, how is that energy going to increase? If that doesn't increase, of course, it's a downhill course, which unfortunately remains the case for many people in chronic diseases. Anyway, let's now come to the understanding of how can we make this switch. I want to read this definition of Paramhans Yogananda ji's on health. Yogananda ji writes, health does not mean mere existence. Keeping out of the hospital is not health. To be able to resist disease, to bear strain, to stimulate mental vitality, and to feel the body as a luxury, as a bird feels when shooting through the air, and as a child does always, is health. That he has put the mind over there, the body over there, the level of joy that he's trying to convey. And again, I'll read a few of the lines of his in some time, that he's making us realize that this, he may not have used this term holistic health, which by the way started getting popular in the 1920s only, but he is suggesting the same in his definition of health. Now, a very interesting thing Paramhans Yogananda ji said is that we all know our physical body is composed of different elements, you might say from the periodic table that we know. Similarly, he said to call the other elements, he said that our astral and causal bodies are also composed of different elements. To give us an example, the quality of ego or chitta or feelings or prana itself, these are components of the astral body. So if we are looking at, achieving this holistic balance in our lives, or like we said, the way the energy flows decides the kind of illness we have, then we need to be working with our inner energies, with prana, with life force, with how we manage and work through our ego. How do we ultimately transcend an ego, our ego? So those are aspects of health that are normally not known. I'll give you another example, friends. In ancient texts of India, it is well known, documented, that the father of Ayurveda, Dhanvantri, he is said to, mythologically in stories, said to have originated during the churning of the ocean. And that ocean, symbolically speaking of the churning, the movement of energy that we bring up the spine and down the spine. And when the energy rises, well, it is said Dhanvantri came with the pot of nectar, and he came with the teachings of Ayurveda that have come down to us. I remember one time Swami Kriyananda ji was sharing that he said the teachings of Ayurveda have come down from a high age, and he said they must have been very high teachings, but they too had to go through the dark ages or Kali Yuga, as Yogananda's Guru Sri Yukteswar ji explained in his book The Holy Science, written in 1895. But he said we have now come into the age, the next higher age of energy. We've come out of the dark ages into the age of energy. So Swami says some errors must have crept into Ayurveda too, and in time, as those are clarified, we will once again understand that to address health is not just on a physical level, it has to be on an emotional level, it has to above all be on a spiritual level. Like the saints say that Ignorance is the worst disease. Well, you might say on one level we are clouded by so much fog of delusion that ignorance doesn't even strike us as a disease in itself. But in higher ages, or for a person whose consciousness is high, that is almost intolerable. Ignorance itself is the originator from where our habits, our ways of thinking, all these things can take a downturn, ultimately manifesting as a spectrum of, you might say, physical diseases. So I'd like to now, friends, read Paramhans Yogananda's lines from this book, How to Achieve Glowing Health and Vitality. And this subsection is called Acquiring Physical, Mental, and Spiritual Perfection. Once you learn to eat right foods, think right thoughts, and be filled with wisdom and joy, your body and mind will be spiritualized and experienced as dynamos of magnetic energy. Your body and mind, purified by this energy, will take on the beauty of the spirit and be a spiritual magnet charged with the life of God, blessing all those it touches. So let us take the time, friends, to apply these teachings in our lives for a healthy and happy life. Thank you.